Hello everybody and welcome to this week's Motor Trade Radio podcast, brought to you in association with eBay Motors Group. It is Saturday the 6th of November and you're joined by myself, Philip Nothard.
And me, Curtis Hutchinson. This is episode 58, season 7 of Motor Trade Radio, bringing you all the chatter that matters. Once again, we've gathered together this week's big car retailing stories across the franchised and independent sectors for you to enjoy all in one place, on demand, on your podcast feed. And we've got a few shout outs to start with, haven't we, Phil?
We have. We've got a busy one today, but yeah, we've got the exclusive sneak preview of eBay Motors Group's monthly market view for October. So we'll be getting into some of the detail on that ahead of when it's launched to the industry, won't we?
We will indeed, and a big shout out to Richard Sawyer, who's the body shop manager at Car Trader 93, and he's become the latest ambassador to join Men Able. And he joined after hearing one of Steve Whitten's Men Able moments on the podcast. So that's really good news to hear.
Yeah, no, welcome. I mean, it's great that you were listening. I think, you know, when Steve had mentioned that to us, we kind of, Richard, sorry, we know that name because he's an avid listener to the podcast and does share things as well. So welcome, Richard, and maybe one day you can come on the podcast and tell us what you're up to and tell us things about that body shop world that you operate within. But yeah, we'll get you on one day, Richard.
Yep, and this week there's AM Live in Birmingham. That's on the 11th of November.
Yeah, and next week we have got a bit of a special for you, so look out for next week. So next Saturday we'll have a bit of a one-off unique special for you to stay tuned for. So we'll let you know more about that next week as we get closer to that. We'll tease you on what's ahead.
That's a really good teaser, Phil. You've got me wondering what we're doing.
You don't know yet, Curtis.
No.
Okay. We'll let you know next week as well.
Thank you very much. So headlines this week. It's a show of two halves. So the first half, we're going to concentrate on the October markets because we've got the new car and van regs. We've got, as you mentioned, our exclusive look at eBay Motors Group's October market view. And we've also got some analysis from Cox on wholesale trends. Also in the headlines, we've got Lusker Motors signing a 280 vehicle EV fleet deal to supply Uber. Year ends from JCT 600 and Hilton Garage, the car supermarket in Derby, and Nissan dealers to offer buy now, pay later in after-sales workshops.
Yeah, so we've busy show, but as I say, we've been waiting for the new vehicle figures for the cars and the LCVs to come out, and as we know this week they have come out. So we'll move over to the cars first, and this is in AM Online, and SMMT hope for brighter 2022 after a 24.6 October new car registration dip. So I think probably not come as a surprise to many. That October was a challenging market for new car registrations with all the supply constraints that me and you have been talking about on a regular basis, Curtis. But the month finished with 265,000 registrations. So they say that's a shortfall of 24.6% compared to what we achieved last year. So unfortunately it is down, but the SMMT are hoping for a brighter future in 2022, and there is some positives around the EV market, isn't there, Curtis?
Yeah, I mean, I had a good look at what was happening in EVs, and there's some interesting stats here. So for the month, battery electric vehicles and plug-in hybrids both outsold diesels over the course of October. Also, twice as many BEVs were registered than PHEVs. So that's 16,155 battery electric vehicles against just over 8,000 plug-in hybrids. Year to date, BEVs account for 10% of the market, PHEVs 6.7% of the market, and diesel, which is the comparison that we're particularly interested in, is 8.8%. So if you were to combine BEVs and FEVs, that's 16.6% of all registrations year to date. So it is showing once again the sort of direction that the market is going in, and this new popularity of BEVs and FEVs.
Yeah, and I think some of that, again, probably demonstrated with the September figures, with Tesla being number one in September, which we did refer to at the time. But it's kind of that availability of stock, isn't it, that's driving some of this as well. And we know that the landscape is changing. The manufacturers are moving towards alternative fuel with battery plug-ins and plug-in hybrid products. So those will become the dominant just by result of choice of vehicles to the marketplace. So it is accelerating, but as you say there, Curtis, it's accelerating at a very fast rate now, isn't it?
It is indeed, and there was a lovely stat in the release that the SMMT forecast that 287,000 plug-in vehicles, so that's a combination of battery and plug-ins, will be registered this year, and that's actually more than all the vehicles registered between 2010 and 2019. So it really is astonishing, the rate of growth now.
It is, and just to put a bit of context in terms of UK performance, that for those listeners that may not see what's happening in some of the other markets, that there has been challenges right across the 4 European markets. So for compared to 2019 figures, they all performed in excess of 35% worse than their 2019 performance. But Germany, compared to 2020 of last year, was down 34.9%. Italy down 35.7%. France down 30.7%, and Spain was down 20.5%. So again, puts in a little bit of context that this isn't about the UK demand, this isn't about UK Pacific availability, this is shortage of supply right across the automotive sector, with poor performances right across the board. And when you look at places like the US being down 22.5%, that's a significant number, bearing in mind they finished on 1.1 million for the month.
Exactly.
So this is all about supply constraints. So it's a challenging time. But anyway, we move on to vans now in the LCV. So as I say, now continuing that we are getting some activity in the market for LCVs, and Car Dealer have covered the story, saying that the SMMT lowers their van forecasts for 2021 as market falls for the second month in a row. So again, supply a little bit later to hit the LCV sector, but now starting to hit it, isn't it, Curtis?
It is, yeah. So the LCV market dipped 4.6% in October, and that's on the back of 27,500 vans registered. And as you say, this is really down to the semiconductor shortage. It is hampering supply. The new van market is actually up 24.4% over the year to date, but it remains 5.2% off that 5-year pre-pandemic average. So it basically equates to 16,000 fewer vans being sold in the year to date.
Yeah, so again, but we know that we've seen some great acceleration of performance in the LCV sector in recent years, and we know the demand is there for LCVs right across the board in the new and used vehicle market. So we know that once supply comes back to the LCV market, then we will be talking probably back onto that growth trajectory for LCVs in the market. So we look forward to that one.
Yeah, and just focusing in on that projected shortfall that was in the headline, the SMMT has downgraded its forecast by over 20,000 fewer vehicles to 340,000 units over the course of 2021. And while this remains higher than 2020, it represents a net decline against 2019, with the market not expected to recover to previous levels until 2023, according to the SMMT.
Yeah. So the next story is staying with car dealer, and this is where car dealer ran one of the Cox Automotive performances for the market tracker for the month of October. So this is where we probably looking at the activity around the wholesale performance in October, and no surprise, I think, Curtis, there that we're seeing an increase year on year around first-time conversions to 88.2%. So that's up 8.2% compared to October of last year. So if you think about stock constraints in October last year, Curtis, we're still seeing an increase in first-time conversions. So the demand is still there this year. Average cap performance at 99.7%, and again that's a 5% increase year on year. But we are still seeing increase in age and mileage now. So the average age of cars in the Mannheim auction is 102.8 months, and the average mileage is just short of 70,000 at 69,330. But again, looking where the market is heading over the next few months there.
And are you seeing some of the bigger players staying out of the market at the moment?
Yeah, and I think we should at this point refer back to the interview we did with Darren Martin, because it's always well received, that. But again, no surprise, we're seeing a little bit of shortage of the big buyers in the marketplace, and that's they'll be gauging what's happening. We saw that the market had moved up 1.2%, and we had that debate with Darren Martin there around that people saw that as a bit of a negative, but we discussed it that's still a 3% swing on what you would normally see at this time of the year. So it's still a very positive move, but you can see where there's a little bit of easing. A lot of the dealers have built up their stock where possible. We're moving into this seasonal slowdown in November, December. Consumer markets had a lot to deal with around conversations around inflation, interest rate rises, which have now been frozen. There's been the autumn budget and what that meant for them, etc., etc. So there's just been that little bit of nervousness, a little bit of caution setting in. But we're expecting, a fairly stable market in November, December, but probably start to see a pent-up activity again as dealers will want to get out, get their forecourts full for January. We always know that January is a very busy month for the sector, and we don't see any other reasons why that won't be again this January coming, that the retail market will be out there and they'll need product and the activity will start again.
Yeah, definitely. And rounding off our look at the October market, our thanks to eBay Motors Group for giving us a sneak preview of the market view for October, which will be published over the course of this week. It'll probably be available on their website from Monday. But there's basically three key elements to October. Stock volumes were up, average days to sell were down, and price rises we're starting to show signs of stabilizing. So if we look at stock first, so average stock volumes were 40.4 vehicles. So that was actually up 9% month on month. So supermarkets saw average listings increase by 11% month on month. Franchise dealers were up 17%, while independent dealers saw a more modest increase of 2%.
Yeah, and the days to sell there, again, we're seeing that a little bit shift there. That the average days to sell, as you say, is 33.4 days. That is a slight drop on the September that was at 35.4 days on average, and slightly lower than what we experienced in October of 2020 that was at 34.7. But again, between the franchise dealer, they were down to 28.1 days this year, this October. The independents down to 43.3 days. So the independent, interestingly, is actually up compared to where they were average days to sell in October of last year, that they were at 41 days. But interestingly, the supermarkets, they were at 30.5 days on average October of last year and down to 22.6 days in October of this year. So a bit of a shift there between the variances between the franchise, independent and supermarkets, with independents seeing an increase, but actually supermarkets dropping significantly an average of about 8 days drop,
Yeah.
moving those cars through very quickly through the supermarkets.
Yeah, and it's worth pointing out that that overall average of 33.4 days is actually the fastest that it's been all year since January. So that is very encouraging, especially as we're seeing those stocks rise. So in terms of pricing, the month-on-month rise is actually showing signs of stabilizing, because it's only risen by 0.6%. So this is for the top 50 makes and models on motors.co.uk. So the average has gone from £13,519 to £13,598. The biggest rise was seen in the supermarket sector, which was up 3.5% to £15,400, followed by franchise dealers, which was up just marginally 0.5% to £16,279, while independents were just marginally down 0.4% to £9,289.
And there is some, I mean, let's say that when this has become available, we do urge that the listeners do head over and get access to this, because there is a lot of detail in the market view from eBay Motors Group, but they do also cite some of the model movements as well. So they've done a sample of 5 vehicles there at 3-year-old and sub 30,000 miles, and sort of highlighted where some of that price shift has been. And there's some significant price shifters in those vehicles there, isn't there, Curtis?
Yeah, especially the Ford Focus. So you don't get a more mainstream car than the Ford Focus, but values or advertised prices were averaging £18,575 in October, which was up 7.7% month on month, but actually up 28.7% year on year, which again is a sort of phenomenal figure for a Ford Focus. But similar rises for the sample of cars that they look at, which includes the Audi A3, which is up 19.7% year on year, BMW 3 Series, which is up 21.1% year on year, Mercedes GLA, which is up 10.9%, and VW Golf up 23%, but very much led there by the Ford Focus.
Definitely. So as I say, there's a lot of detail in this report. It will be available. This is a bit of an exclusive for the Motor Trade Radio podcast, but when it does become available, have a look at it. Some good detail and some good insight there, and some good comparisons, because it's always good to see where the activity is between a franchise, independent and supermarket, because they do operate differently, and it's great for each of them to see what the others are doing. So definitely worth heading over to that.
You're listening to All the Chatter That Matters on Motor Trade Radio, brought to you in association with eBay Motors Group. This is your weekly one-stop shop for all the biggest car retailing headlines from across the media, available on demand wherever you are on your podcast feed.
So, heading over to motortrader.com, and our good old friend Robin Luscombe, and this is where they did appoint a new fleet manager, didn't they, Curtis, to the business?
Yes.
Tim Whitworth, who joined in January to head up the dealership's national fleet operations. But it looks like they've secured a pretty significant deal here, because Motor Trader headliner is that Luscombe Motors secures order for 280 MG5 EVs. Now, interestingly, and anybody that has missed some of the big headlines of the week, which we're not covering for obvious reasons, but this is a deal that they've done with Uber for vehicles across the UK, which is quite interesting, because we kind of were going to open up with the reference to the Tesla and Uber and Hertz story, but then it didn't happen, did it, Curtis?
It didn't. No, we covered the story last week. This as I phrase it, mega Hertz deal, which was the headline that wasn't used. But yes, we covered that last week, and it was a massive deal. Got a lot of press internationally, and it was followed a couple of days later by Elon Musk from Tesla saying that the contract had not been signed, and which got me wondering how on earth were Hertz in a position to put out a press release when the contract hadn't been signed. So I think we've got more to hear on that particular story. Yeah. But and Robin Luscombe does actually reference the deal, because he says that while this may not be as big as the deal that Tesla did last week, it's still very good going, and it is, because this is a massive contract, 280 MG5 EVs, as you say, and this is really following the appointment of Tim Whitworth as their National Fleet Operations Manager. And Tim, he was actually on one of our EV forums a couple of months ago. His background is he's ex Mitsubishi and Suzuki, and he was fleet manager at Hughes Motor Group. So when Robin appointed him, there was obviously some strategic thinking here that Robin, which they operate in Leeds, but he's thinking wider than the local market, and is looking at more sort of national fleet deals. And what a great way to kick off with this mega deal with MG.
At least he's confirmed it. Someone just forgot to tell Elon, didn't they?
Yes.
But no, I think again, on a serious note, a great move. And we will get Robin on, and we've had him and his son Sam on the podcast recently. But I think really this move into one, transitioning to be an MG dealer, and two, the focus he put onto EV. And Sam and Robin did talk about that on the interview with them, about that transitioning to talk about EV and become EV specialists, and what's been happening with EV through the pandemic and the lockdowns with MG and the EV sales. But now, as you say, they're leading now with this volume and these fleet opportunities with the business. So fantastic move with Robin there for the Luscombe Motors business in terms of that move to MG EV, and now becoming a significant UK fleet dealer.
And staying with Motor Trader, the next headline is JCT 600 pre-tax profits rise 25% to 19.6 million in 2020. So this is the full year results for 2020. And it's a strong performance. So pre-tax profits up 25% to 19.6 million on turnover, which was down 12.6% to 1.1 billion pounds. And it's kind of a familiar story, really, isn't it? Because we've been looking at the year ends from the big dealer groups, and I think all of them have recorded pre-tax profits up on turnover that's down. So, and this is all down to improved margins in both new and used vehicles. So within the story, JCT confirmed that they outperformed the overall market in both new and used sales, and indeed fleet sales. So it shows the strength of their performance over the course of what was a difficult year.
Yeah, they do finish off with a bit of a statement that whilst it's difficult to predict economic conditions for the remainder of the first half of the year has been buoyant for the remainder of the year, but the first half of the year has been buoyant, and the director's current forecasts for the full year results are encouraging, with healthy profit contribution expected. So again, looking that 2021 will be another positive year for them in terms of that profitability. I suspect turnover will probably be still down, but it looks like they are, as many of the other dealers, now focusing on that profitability, whilst volume remains a challenge.
And heading over to car dealer for the next headline, car supermarket Hilton Garage increases sales by more than £50 million in latest accounts. So this is for the 12 months up to the end of May 2021. And just as a bit of background, Hilton Garage, it operates a single site in Derby. It's a used car supermarket, but it is a sizable site, because I understand you know it, don't you, Phil?
It's a big site, yeah. It's a big operation there. So again, a single site, but obviously, I think what is interesting with this story though, Curtis, is on the back of our last one, the comment that we just made there, that actually their turnover and profit have doubled, haven't they, compared to turnover being down at many other businesses. So, they've seen a significant increase. So again, focusing on that used vehicle supermarket, and maybe where we've just been talking about that days to sell and stock level in the eBay Motors Group market view, it looks like these guys have benefited from that performance, haven't they?
Yeah, so sales at the site totaled 106.9 million, so that was up from 49.5 million in the previous year, while pre-tax profits rose to 3.9 million from 1.4 million the previous year. So as you say, that's a doubling of both turnover and profits.
Yeah, and there's a comment in there that our furlough payments for the financial year only amounted to 160,000. So I think they're trying to point out that the profitability didn't come from furlough support in terms of what they operate. Yeah. So again, great performance there from particularly a single site operation through the challenges that we're facing in stock supply.
Yeah, and also another lovely quote from the story. This is from our single retail site. I think it might be one of the best years comparable to any other supermarket, pound for pound. So there's a challenge from George Manning, director at Hilton Garage.
It's a big site, and they look like lined up very well.
Yes, because you're a bit of a stickler for
I am, yeah, but I'd probably say, can I test drive that one in the middle of that one that's back-to-back row of 15 cars? But yeah, maybe not. So our final story, and this is a great news, and sometime we will get Bumper onto the podcast. I think I'll forgive them because they are busy boys at the minute. A Bumper with what they're doing in the market, but we're heading back over to AM Online, and this is where Nissan introduces interest-free monthly payments for after-sales services via Bumper. Now, Bumper have been hitting the headlines quite a bit recently, haven't they, Curtis? And obviously with their expansion and what they're doing. So this is a great move for these guys, particularly with Nissan supporting them now.
Yeah, definitely. And I must declare an interest because I do work with Bumper on their PR, and they have actually got a lot of good news to put out at the moment, including this deal with Nissan. So it actually followed a piloting with the Westway Nissan Group in London, and it will see that buy now, pay later will be offered to all Nissan dealers. So that's 194 dealers across the UK, and it's live from now. And so buy now, pay later for after sales bills, and this will cover things like accessories, maintenance, MOT, servicing, repair work, and being in a position now to offer customers the opportunity, the option of actually paying in monthly instalments with 0% interest.
Yeah, no, it's a fantastic move, and let's say, I mean, Westway, who have piloted, avid listener to the podcast with John Roberts there, who's the MD of Westway, and the fact that Bumper have got Westway supporting it. I mean, as you say, they're not they're not putting, it's not arbitrary for the dealers to have it, but they are backing it for the dealer network to have it. But moving very well with it, because Bumper have also partnered with Ford, VW Group, Jaguar Land Rover, and also with Arnold Clark's and See It Now. So again, some significant partnerships there in both the dealer OEM and OEM space, isn't there?
Yeah, and to just give the story some context, there's a quote from Chris Marsh, who's the after-sales director at Nissan, who said that by offering buy now, pay later, they'll be able to target transactions of typically, 6-year-old cars, that's a target for them, where transactions can be as much as £670. So that makes a huge difference if you can pay in installments rather than putting it on a debit or credit card.
Definitely. So hopefully, let's say, head over to the eBay Motors group. Market View when it becomes available. Lots of data, lots of insight in there. We always encourage you to, go over to the headlines that we've been talking about today on the trade medias and get a little bit more what we've been talking about there. Interesting in-depth data on the car and the LCV performance for the month of October, and stay with us for next week for an exclusive, interesting podcast that we'll have lined up for you next week, and let you know about it later, Curtis. You'll be all right.
Thanks. I really must start reading your memos. So that's all for now. You've been listening to the weekly Motor Trade Radio podcast brought to you in association with eBay Motors Group. Many thanks for joining us for all the chat that matters. We're back again next week for that special podcast. Until then, it's goodbye from me.
And it's goodbye from him.